Hello, I'm Nadia. Today's topic is Germany's invasion of Poland in 1939, the spark that triggered World War II. Now, popular accounts of this invasion contain a lot of false statements, which are a legacy of German propaganda claiming their invincible military superiority. And I'm not going to rehash the version that Poland was quickly overrun by Germany and was forced to surrender after only 2 weeks. In fact, it may surprise you to hear that Poland was not overrun by Germany, and nor did it ever surrender. No, Poland fought for its independence until the very end of the war. And there's another common distortion of what happened that few of us realise. Hitler ordered his military to send to death, mercilessly and without compassion, men, women, and children of Polish derivation and language. His words mark a flagrant disregard for defenceless Polish civilians. These days, it seems we only ever talk about Hitler's genocide of 6 million Jews, and as appalling as that was, we never seem to mention the fact that Hitler executed at least as many Slavs, if not more. These were Poles, Ukrainians, and Russians, who he also deemed to be inferior. Hitler unleashed a pulverizing aerial and ground assault on Poland with a ferocity that had never been seen before, his blitzkrieg. It was designed to strike such terror into the population that the government would be forced to capitulate at once. But the Poles didn't surrender. They fought back, and with great heroism. And while it's true that Hitler had a formidable military that was well equipped with tanks and aircraft, not everything was mechanized. The German army still relied heavily on horsepower and manpower, as you can see in this photo of Hitler saluting a long column of troops marching on foot into Poland. Germany's prior annexation of part of Czechoslovakia had laid the ground for an invasion, and 1.5 million German troops began assembling along 1,750 miles of Poland's border. In this cartoon, the German positions are shown in yellow circles and Polish defensive positions are shown in green. The figures on the right show that Germany had about twice the manpower, planes and guns compared with Poland, but the greatest disparity was in the number of tanks. In April 1939, the British government issued a stern warning to Hitler. If Germany attacks Poland, His Majesty's government would feel themselves bound at once to lend the Polish government all the support in their power. They gave repeated warnings that the Royal Air Force would conduct retaliatory bombing raids on Germany if Poland was attacked. And France made similar commitments, both allies unequivocal in their promise of military assistance for Poland. This was crucial because France alone had an even larger and better equipped military than Germany. So the Polish strategy was to conduct a fighting retreat, delaying the German advance as much as possible. They would defend their territory tenaciously as they gradually fell back further and further east, while in the meantime the promised interventions from France and Britain would draw enemy forces away to defend Germany. If necessary, the Poles would dig in at a bridgehead near Romania, where they had prepared ammunition and supplies, and they would be able to dig in and hold off German forces for as long as necessary from the bridgehead. I'll tell the story of the Polish army's heroism through the eyes of this man, Marcin Rupniak, my father. He received the Virtuti Militari during the invasion of Poland. This is Poland's highest military honour, equivalent to the American Medal of Honour or the British Victoria Cross. Never did he mention a word about this to me. I only discovered it by chance after his death. His reticence about what he did during the war is another reason why the Polish experience of the invasion isn't widely known. After the war, he was unable to return to Poland, which was under communist rule. He couldn't speak out about his role in the war because it might endanger his remaining family in Poland. And indeed, his mother and 3 brothers had already been deported to Siberia, precisely because he was an officer in the army. This is my father's graduation photo from the prestigious Artillery Officers Training School, the Szkoła Poczeronic Artylerii, taken in 1938. After this, he joined an elite brigade, the 10th Brigada Cavalerii, or 10BK. This was the only brigade in Poland equipped with tanks, and it had been formed specifically in response to the growing threat from Germany. 10BK was led by Colonel Stanisław Maciek. According to his memoir, when the invasion began, even his elite brigade only had about 9 Vickers tanks. Their remaining armoured vehicles were tankettes, which were tiny, but they had the advantage over much larger German tanks of being highly manoeuvrable. My father wasn't recruited into 10BK to drive tanks. He was hired as a fire officer commanding anti-tank guns, like the one in this photo. This shows the back of the gun, where the 6-man crew would crouch behind the gun shield as they loaded, cleaned, and fired shells from the cannon. The range of these guns meant that the enemy tanks had to be visible through binoculars before they were fired, which meant that the enemy could also see the Polish gun unless it was concealed. The fire officer had to use trigonometry to calculate the correct angle of the gun to hit approaching enemy tanks. He would calculate this using a cylindrical slide rule like the one shown here. Not only did this require someone with advanced mathematical skills, it needed someone with an incredible presence of mind. He had to be able to blot out the explosions and people being killed and wounded around him and focus on this calculation. If he miscalculated, he and his entire crew would be killed by return fire. In August 1939, 10BK received orders to join Army Krakow in southwest Poland. Their task was to defend the historic city of Krakow from German troops who would advance into Poland across the Tatra Mountains from Slovakia. The Germans had orders to encircle Army Krakow and destroy it. On the right is a photograph I found among my dad's personal effects after he died. It gives me chills whenever I look at it. On the back he wrote Rupniak, August 1939. In the background you can see an abbey, Rupniak Abbey, near Krakow. My dad is seated here in the front. He was just 24 years old. I wonder what was going through the minds of these men as they bathed in the river Vistula, knowing the formidable enemy they were about to confront. In the coming battles, they would be outnumbered by German troops 10-1. How many of these men managed to survive the following weeks? The Tatra Mountains were defended by Polish border forces of about 3,000 men. They had suffered heavy casualties and 10BK was ordered south to support them. They were to hold the Germans for as long as possible at Jordanow. They arrived just in time. 200 German tanks were approaching from the south. 10BK positioned their anti-tank guns on the mountain above the village, concealed behind a tree line, and waited till evening. Then they opened fire in a surprise attack, destroying several German tanks. The Germans withdrew and waited to counterattack the next day, 2nd of September. At 5:30 a.m., the night silence was shattered by a thundering eruption of enemy fire. 2 German advances were repelled, followed by a third. In his military records, I found my dad's diary of the invasion. He wrote, around 10 a.m., took on a strong attack by 200 tanks. They overran our observation points and came face to face with our gun positions. We destroyed 10 of them and the rest retreated. He was awarded the Virtuti Militari for his heroism at this battle. It was day 2 of the invasion and his first full day in active combat. In all, the Poles managed to destroy 60 German tanks, which is a remarkable achievement. The next day, the 3rd of September, was another momentous day for Poland. Britain and France declared war on Germany. Large crowds gathered in Warsaw carrying banners that said, "Long live England." Outside the embassy, they sang the British national anthem. The British ambassador addressed them, saying, "We will fight side by side against aggression and injustice." Little did these poor people know that despite their fine words, Britain had no intention of a military intervention to assist Poland. Densely populated Polish cities were subjected to relentless bombardment by the Luftwaffe. One of those pilots said, "I had to drop bombs onto a train station in Poznan on the 2nd day of the war in Poland. 8 of the 16 bombs fell in the city, right in the middle of the houses. I didn't like it. On the 3rd day, I didn't care. And on the 4th day, I took pleasure in it." In response to the attack on Poland, the British War Cabinet did order its air force to fly over German cities. But they weren't dropping bombs as they promised. No. They dropped 6 million propaganda leaflets with a stern warning from Britain. Of course, this had no deterrent effect whatsoever. Over the following days, Army Krakow was forced to slowly retreat and abandon the city of Krakow. But crucially, they had avoided encirclement by the enemy, and they fought on. During the first 5 days of the invasion, 10BK managed to slow down the advance of the German army to just 3 miles per day. That's an impressive achievement, and it was thanks to Colonel Matczek's skillful leadership. He said, "We repeatedly presented the same squadron of tanks and our modest 2 troops of artillery, simulating a large armoured formation, this deceiving the enemy as to our true strength and intention." So in other words, the men of 10BK had to work extremely hard and without rest. As the Polish army withdrew, they left behind thousands of defenceless citizens. Horrific brutality awaited them at the hands of the Einsatzgruppen. These were stormtroopers and secret police. One of them said, "Polish civilians and soldiers are dragged out everywhere. When we finish our operation, the entire village is on fire. No one is left alive." On the 7th of September, 10BK was dispersed to reassemble at Radwów. for a much-needed rest, and they were to replenish their supplies. But no sooner had they arrived than their refueling point had fallen into enemy hands, and this meant they had to abandon their tanks, leaving only their tankettes. Instead of the promised break, they now had new orders to set up defensive lines along the River San. On that day, the 7th of September, there was a crucial development for Poland. France invaded Germany. A full mobilisation had been ordered in France on the 1st of September. By the 7th of September, 30 divisions, including 40 tank battalions, were at the German border. There was to be a full-scale invasion of Germany on the 16th of September. This was a game changer. France had the largest and best equipped army in all of Europe. With French troops opening a western front against Germany, enemy troops would have to be withdrawn from Poland to defend Germany. The war could have ended right there. Countless lives could have been saved. But this all-out assault never materialized. Since Germany had committed almost all of its military capability in Poland, the French encountered almost no opposition when they crossed the border. 11 French divisions advanced about 5 miles into Germany. But the Anglo-French War Council ordered a halt to the invasion on the 12th of September. The Poles were not informed of this decision. On the contrary, a French-German general informed the Polish commander-in-chief that half of his divisions were in contact with the enemy and had forced Germany to withdraw at least 6 divisions from Poland, which was a lie. After the war at the Nuremberg trials, a German commander said that the only reason their invasion of Poland succeeded was because about 110 French and British divisions were held completely inactive against the 23 German divisions. Completely oblivious to the fact that both Britain and France had reneged on their promises to come to their assistance, the Poles fought on alone. On the 13th of September, 10BK received orders to defend the great historic Polish city of Lwów. This was my dad's home. He grew up just 40 miles from the city. And it was during this battle that he received his second commendation for the Virtuti Militari. 10BK was to attack the village of Zabojska, which had fallen into enemy hands. In heavy fighting over several days, they managed to retake Zabojska on the 17th of September. It was a remarkable achievement. 10BK was the only Polish brigade that managed to recapture territory from the enemy. They paid a heavy price for their victory, suffering 1,000 casualties. But despite the fact they were exhausted from continuous fighting for 17 days, these men had not given up. Far from it. There was still everything to fight for. This cartoon shows the German and Polish troop positions on the 17th of September. While Germany had gained territory, Poland was not on the brink of collapse. All the while, Britain and France continued their assurances that military support was on the way. So the idea that Poland capitulated to Germany is completely wrong. Indeed, Germany's General Field Marshal von Rundstedt said that the bravery and heroism of the Polish army merits great respect. I believe that after the war, the West was happy to perpetuate a false impression of the defeat of Poland by vastly superior German forces. This was because they didn't want to call attention to the cowardice and betrayal by Poland's allies, France and Britain. In fact, the fatal blow to Poland was delivered by Stalin. He had signed a secret pact with Hitler to invade Poland and divide the spoils between them. Stalin had waited over 2 weeks for the Polish army to be exhausted before making his move. 500,000 Soviet troops poured across Poland's eastern border. Impossible to fight both enemies on 2 fronts, the Polish army was ordered to evacuate to Hungary and Romania. My dad was very fortunate to have been fighting here in Lvov on that date. He was one of the lucky ones who was able to escape in time to Hungary. But hundreds of thousands of Polish troops couldn't reach the border in time and were captured by the Soviets. They were executed, imprisoned, or sent to hard labour camps in Siberia. Now, remember that the Poles believed their allies France and Britain were assisting them. They didn't surrender. Instead, they evacuated their government and army in order to regroup in France, where they would together launch a counteroffensive to liberate Poland. I'll tell you what happened next in another video. It wasn't only in the interests of Britain and France to go along with the German propaganda version of the collapse of Poland. Joseph Stalin, who ordered the fatal Soviet invasion of Poland, was Hitler's ally during the first half of World War II. When these 2 dictators later fell out and became sworn enemies, Stalin forged an alliance with Britain and America against Hitler. So here's another reason why the West sought to amplify Hitler's atrocities and downplay Stalin's. How else could they justify their alliance with a dictator who perpetuated the war with Hitler? Perversely, these days, the Russian President Vladimir Putin accuses Poland of having started the war. This caused a diplomatic spat that made headline news in 2019. I hope this video has given you a new perspective on the invasion of Poland. Please leave me a comment, as I love to hear from you, and subscribe to my channel. Thank you so much for watching.